Next up, we have Dr. Bart Main. Dr. Main is a child and adolescent psychiatrist for the Cape Cod Healthcare Centers for Behavioral Health in Hyannis. He attended the Indiana University School of Medicine and completed his residency in general psychiatry at the University of Minnesota Medical Center, where he also completed a fellowship in child and adolescent psychiatry. Dr. Main has been affiliated with Cape Cod Healthcare since 2011 and is certified by the American Board of Psychiatry and Neurology, Child and Adolescent Psychiatry. Today, Dr. Main will discuss what does mental health look like and how do kids get there. I can't wait. Thank you.
Off. No, there we go. So before we started this afternoon, I went around and asked people who they were in the audience. And it turns out we have a lot of expertise here this afternoon. We have healthcare professionals, mental health professionals, educator professionals, grandparents, parents, just a rich group here. So I don't think I want to talk like an expert. I want to interact with you as much as possible. I've been doing this work for about 40 years, child psychiatry. I just see kids and adolescents, and I've seen kids in all different settings. But my focus has been in helping children get out of some kind of pathology. I'm not going to take that attitude today. I want to instead look at what does mental health look like? What are we shooting for? And all of us are engaged in that endeavor all the time. There are a lot of different takes on what mental health might be. We could talk about economic success. There are lots of people around the world who are looking at happiness. We could think about a lot of different things that have been addressed today, avoiding the evil influences of society. I'm going to try to show you guys a different way of thinking about it. I'm a brain scientist, and so my orientation is, what are our brain capacities? So I'm going to ask you to think about two different brain capacities. One is the capacity for resilience, and the other is agency. Okay, so resilience is the playful attitude that Nicole so nicely demonstrated on stage. Here's a chart. You can pick any of these things and think of it as a template. It's really whatever you want it to be. Play with this. Okay, what a wonderful, resilient attitude. There's not mistakes, there's just learning. And agency is actually, you get to choose. And Manny did this very nicely. Katie did this very well as well. The capacity to write our own story is so very, very important. And if we put those two things together, I think we can have a good recipe for mental health. You might think about this a little and say, well, wait a minute, those two things seem to work at cross purposes. We want to be an agent, we want to have a goal, we want to do things, but at the same time, if things are not going well, we have to change our strategy. So we have to be both willful and flexible. This is one of my favorite sayings, a proverb from the Orient. Like the willow, grow to be strong, but willing to bend. The full proverb goes on to say, after the storm, it's the willow that stands, not the oak. Okay? So I've got a whole bunch of oak trees in my backyard. And you know, we make flooring out of oak, right? It's really sturdy. But I'm going around all the time picking up broken branches, right, from in my backyard because the oak trees are snapping off when we have these nor'easters and gusts of wind at 40, 50 miles an hour. The willow trees sway in the breeze and come back. That's resiliency. That's what we're asking kids to do. I have kids in the office all the time who snap under stress. They have a hard time being playful and willowy. You guys remember these? I love Billy Joel. But one of the problems we have in being resilient is it seems to us as though we're giving up or we're giving in. So we have to help kids understand that it's okay to change your mind. The bottom quote is my dad's favorite quote. He's no longer with us, but I've cut it off 3 times and it's still too short. So frustrating. And again, we know that if we don't change strategies and we're not successful, it's likely we'll be not successful again. But the whole thing that we're trying to inculcate into our kids is to be flexible, to be playful, to be able to change course, to experiment with things. So I very, very frequently ask kids or quote to kids in the office, everybody makes mistakes. We all know everybody makes mistakes. But smart people learn from their mistakes. So would you choose to be a smart person? I'm not sure who actually said this middle quote. It's often attributed to Einstein. I don't know if that's really true. I don't have to read it to you. You guys can all read. I like the bottom one a lot. I'm often in the position of saying, well, can't you fix this? Parents bring the kid in and say, can't you fix this? Well, only if the light bulb is willing to change, right? It's very difficult to get people to change something that they don't want to. People are very invested. So, Manny has already really elegantly presented mindfulness to you. But I want to think about mindfulness in the context of resiliency. So if you recall, what Manny said was that being mindful is choosing in the moment to pay attention without judgment. And it's the without judgment part that is so important to resiliency. If we try an approach to a situation and that doesn't seem to be working, if we can take a moment and reflect on that, to be aware of it without judgment, and instead of saying, oh, I'm so stupid, or, oh boy, that was really bad, which we so often do, all of us do. If we can instead say, well, what can I learn from that? It could be hugely beneficial. But taking that moment, that pause, that mindfulness is so, so important. Okay, so as a child psychiatrist, one of the things I've been interested in over the years is education, child's education, because kids spend a lot of time in school. So that's a very important socializing influence. And one of the things that is commonly promoted now in educational situations is SEL, social and emotional learning. And there are a lot of different programs. Calmer Trace is one of those. There are a lot of different programs. But they're trying to talk with kids about social values, which when I was a kid, school didn't talk about that. That was up to the families, right? But now schools are kind of getting in the mix. Well, as I was consulting and working with schools over the years, what I hear is there are certain values that are highly valued. And I started thinking about it. I said, well, wait a minute. Actually, there are polar opposite spectrums of values. So we want people to be respectful, and we also want them to be honest. So if I say, whoa, I really hate your outfit, that would be honest, but not respectful. On the other hand, if my barn door is open and you notice it and don't tell me, that might be respectful, but not sufficiently honest. So in each of these areas, there are apparently polar opposite values that we all value. So how do we decide? What are we trying to teach? We want people to be more in tune with their emotions, or do we want to have them be more intellectual and logical? Spock from Star Trek. We want them to be receptive, and one of the things about mindfulness is being really present and aware and try to become conscious of what's really there right now. Okay? On the other hand, it's very important to take initiative. It's very important to have a goal and go for it and not be too distracted by other stuff. Playfulness versus responsibility, I think that's pretty self-evident. Flexibility versus persistence, we've talked a lot about that. And sociability versus self-awareness. How much are we tuned into other people? How much are we tuned into ourselves? And those seem like opposites in each area. Okay, so the cool thing about resilience and the application of mindfulness is if we take a moment to pause, we get to choose where we sit, how do we behave on each of those spectras. Okay? And it's really important to have kids recognize that actually it's good to have the full spectrum on each one of these things. And different situations call for different places to be on the spectrum. So, next, agency. You guys know Yogi Berra? Okay. So, I always ask kids, so who's telling your story? Are you the author of your story? Or are other people just all telling you what to do and you just have to do it? You're an actor, or are you the director of the play? And the notion of agency is actually, I am the chooser. I am the person who gets to do this. So we can contrast. On the left is sort of the victim mindset. On the right is the active agent mindset. So I make a mistake, I couldn't help it. Or, oh, won't do that again. I don't know how it happened. Or, now I understand. Okay. You all know Murphy's Law? If things could go wrong, they will. We got to pay attention. We can't just surrender to chaos. So the bottom line here, why does this happen to me, can be asked in two different ways, right? Why does this happen to me? You know, who's got it in for me? Versus, why does this happen to me? What can I learn? So now, here's the kicker. If we're mindful and we get to choose, that means we're responsible. That's not always fun. Ownership. I'm curious what you see in this picture. Anybody say one characteristic they're picking up? What do they notice? Speak out. Bliss. Connection. Mindfulness. Be more concrete, guys. Who is this girl? Taking time to smell the flowers. So you pick up on the flower. The bliss, if you pick up on that I presume it's a she. I'm not actually for sure about that. But she seems to be totally focused on that sensory experience. What else do you notice, though? Who is she? She wears glasses, big glasses. For kids at this age, that's important. I don't want to wear my glasses, right? She's got some kind of athletic jersey on there. It says, I think it says NYC at the bottom. So she's identified as part of New York City, and it's athletic. And then she's wearing hijab, I think, right? So this is such a mixture of culture and identification. This is a wonderful thing for a person to be able to endorse all those different ways of seeing herself. Okay, way cool. So what gives her life meaning? How does she decide who she is? And she has this incredibly eclectic view of herself, which gives her so much flexibility. So what do we do as parents or grandparents to help facilitate this in our kids? This is a very complicated question, which I am not going to address in any kind of adequacy this afternoon. But what I've written on here is the progression of child development and different ways that parents and grandparents, caregivers, should interact with kids. So in infancy, we want to be predictable. In toddler development, we want to have boundaries of responsibility. In preschoolers, we want to have an empathic presence. In school-age kids, we want to be consultants. And for adolescents, we want to be good models. So there's a lot more to it than that, but that's like really quick and dirty. So I just want to at least touch on that to say that actually parenting styles have to vary with the age of the kid and the developmental level of the kid, but also the situation the child is in and how you see them reacting. So if you see an 8-year-old who's reacting like a 2-year-old, then we should respond parentally as though we're parenting a 2-year-old. How many of us have said, I wish they came with instructions? And it really is truly amazing how different they are. I have younger brothers who are identical twins. And they're so identical that their kids can't tell them apart. Okay? It's like they look alike. But one's a veterinarian, very quiet guy, very thoughtful kind of guy, very warm and grounded. The other twin is a tennis champion, an extraordinarily competitive guy who's made tons of money as a business consultant internationally. Okay. Couldn't be different in terms of personality, although they're genetically identical. So I'm not sure how that happens, but it seems like it's just there. And they do have a mind of their own. All of the children, we got to say, this is from very, very early, and Katie probably could say this better than I can. The children speak for themselves from birth, before birth, probably, right? Okay. So my basic message, my soul core message to you is play to their strengths, appreciate who they are, and help them capitalize on who they are and what they have going for them. That's it.